students, welcome to the lecture on Industrial Relation Management. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the concept of industrial relations. Discuss about the history of industrial relation. Understand the systems approach to industrial relations. Describe the ideological framework of industrial relations. Explain the scope of industrial relation. Discuss the causes of poor industrial relations. Discuss the approaches of industrial relations. Let's start with the introduction of industrial relation management. Industrial relations play a vital role in establishing and maintaining the industrial democracy in the country. Industrial relations mean relationship between management and employees and their organization that characterize or grow out of employment. The term industrial relation is very comprehensive, and it includes in its fold all the relationships in the modern industrial society, which arise out of employer-employee relationships and also the role of the state regarding these relations. Industrial relations involve attempt to workable solutions between conflicting objectives and values, between incentive and economic security, between discipline and industrial democracy, between authority and freedom, and between bargaining and cooperation. The concept of industrial relations has been extended to denote the relations of the state with employers, workers, and their organizations. The subject therefore includes individual relations and joint consultation between employers and work people at their workplace, collective relations between employers and their organizations, and trade unions, and the part played by the state in regulating these relations.
I'm going to move from here right on to what are called the principles of good industrial relations practice. Some of these are going to be pretty obvious, but for example, this one, employment policies should exist, rules and regulations should exist in writing and should be made known to management and employees. I want to just take a little aside here for a minute, because there's something about the way people learn that a lot of people don't understand. I think that we tend to assume that because you have read something that you've understood it. Assuming that all your employees are literate and can read, which is an assumption that you can't always make. I've heard supervisors over and over again say, but what's the matter? What do you mean you didn't know? It's there in black and white. It's in the rules, it's there in black and white, it's up on the bulletin board. And we assume that because the rule exists and it exists in writing, that people know about it. But not all adults learn like that. Not all anybody learns like that. There are different ways in which people learn. One is by visual, one is by auditory, one is by reading and writing, and one is kinesthetic. Kinesthetic is by doing. The principles of good industrial relations practice, or good employee relations practice as they're also known, are based on the principles that have been hammered out through years of work at the International Labour Organization amongst governments, trade unions and employers. They're also based on the rules of natural justice and on case law and decisions that have been made by industrial courts and tribunals over the years throughout the Caribbean. The importance of knowing what these principles and practices are is to avoid problems from arising, because when they are not observed and a dispute arises, it will be on the basis of whether or not these were observed that judgments and decisions will be taken by industrial courts and tribunals. These can be very expensive, both in terms of money and in terms of morale within an organization. So it is important that we know what they are and that they are observed. The first of these and perhaps the most obvious, is that employment rules and policies and practices should be made known to employers, to managers, to employees, and that they should exist in writing where people can make reference to them. It's not enough that they exist in writing, they must also be explained, because not everybody learns best through reading and writing. Some people learn best through the use of discussion and debate. But it's particularly important for new employees or for first-time employees who have never worked before. You cannot assume that people know without being told what the rules of an organization are. Going into a new organization, like going into a new family or a new country, implies a different culture, different rules, and people have to be explicitly told what these rules are so that they won't inadvertently breach them. That is the first principle of good industrial relations practice, and one which is frequently evoked in disputes. The second principle, which is equally important, and failure to observe it has perhaps ended up with more decisions being made against employers than any other, is the principle that anyone who is accused of breaching a rule.
Let us now discuss about industrial relation history. Historical development in industrial relations was established in 1996 by the Center for Industrial Relations to provide an outlet for and to stimulate an interest in historical work in the field of industrial relations and the history of industrial relations thought. The employment relationship and economic, social, and political factors surrounding it, such as labor markets, union and employer policies and organization, the law and gender and ethnicity. An explicit political dimension, particularly recognizing divisions within the working class and within workers' organizations, will be encouraged, as will historical work on labor law. Pre-independence era. Hired and fired. Employer was in commanding position. Wages were very poor. Till the end of First World War, trade unions movement had not emerged. Post-independence era. After independence, significant step was enacted of Industrial Dispute Act 1947. Permanent machinery was set up not only to settle industrial disputes, but also to make these awards binding and legally enforceable. Besides this, Industrial Conference in December 1947 was held, where an appeal was made to labor and management in the form of Industrial Truce Resolution to maintain industrial peace and harmony. Setting up of the Labor Conference, a tripartite body, cooperation between employers, trade unions, and government. Now we will study the industrial relation concepts. Industrial relations has become one of the most delicate and complex problems of modern industrial society. Industrial progress is impossible without cooperation of labors and harmonious relationships. Therefore, it is in the interest of all to create and maintain good relations between employees, labor, and employers, management. The term industrial relations comprises of two terms, industry and relations. Industry refers to any productive activity in which an individual or a group of individuals are engaged. By relations, one means the relationships that exist within the industry between the employer and his workmen. The term industrial relations have a broad as well as a narrow outlook. Originally, industrial relations were broadly defined to include the relationships and interactions between employers and employees. From this perspective, industrial relations cover all aspects of employment relationship, including human resource management, employee relations, and union management or labor relations. Now its meaning has become more specific and restricted. For example, employee compensation issues may be usefully addressed in terms of economic theory, but psychological theories offer useful insights on employee attitudes toward and reactions to compensation matters. Though the nature of industrial relation issues is sufficiently unique to justify considering industrial relations a true discipline, has been controversial, but most scholars appear to favor the interdisciplinary subject view. Let's now talk about the elements and features of industrial relations. Industrial relations arise out of an employment relationship. The IR system sets complex rules and regulations for the participants, viz., employer, workers, and the state to ensure industrial peace and harmony. Essential elements. Relations existing in industry and relations between unions and management, unions themselves, management and the government, and unions and government, employers and employees, conflicts in relationship. Feature. Arise out of an employment relationship, complex rules and regulations for the participants. The major objectives in industrial relations are to maintain sound relations between employees and employers, to develop harmonious relations and establish the industrial democracy. 1. To bring better understanding and cooperation between employers and workers. 2. To establish a proper channel of communication between workers and management. 3. To ensure constructive contribution of trade unions. 4. To avoid industrial conflicts and to maintain harmonious relations.
Well, if you're concerned at all with the profitability and output of your business, you better concentrate on it. What does it mean? Well, it probably means retaining key employees longer, increasing productivity, weeding out employees who don't fit into that mold, and really being comfortable in an environment that helps you manage the people that you want to manage. It also sets the tone for how those employees treat outsiders, because in the end, it's not only your employees, it's the customers that really matter. Bottom line, employee relationships certainly drive productivity, and productivity drives profitability.
Healthy industrial relations at the workplace, in the main, are a function of a problem-solving attitude on the part of both the unions and the management. The maintenance of smooth industrial relations, therefore, should depend on the existence of strong, well-organized, and democratic employees' unions to ensure equal bargaining power for protection of employees' interests relating to wages, benefits, job security, etc. Interestingly, a few organizations in the post-liberalization economy have shown preference for a unionless organization. The existence of strong and well-organized employers' unions to facilitate promotion and the maintenance of uniform personnel policies among various organizations. In the words, industrial relations involve attempts at arriving at solutions between the conflicting objectives and values, between profit motive and social gain, between discipline and freedom, between authority and industrial democracy, between bargaining and cooperation, and between conflicting interests of the individual, the group, and the community. Needs. Effective industrial relations means industrial peace necessary for better and higher production. Hence, healthy industrial relations is the key to progress of individuals, management, industry, and nation. Need of industrial relations are uninterrupted production. It is the most important benefit of industrial relations. It ensures continuity of production. Maintenance. The following measures should be taken to maintain good industrial relations. Strong and stable union. A strong and stable union in each industrial enterprise is essential for good industrial relations. Mutual trust. Both management and labor should help in the development of an atmosphere of mutual cooperation, confidence, and respect. Maintenance of harmonious industrial relations is of vital importance for the survival and growth of the industrial enterprise. Establishes industrial democracy. Industrial relations mean settling employees' problems through collective bargaining, mutual cooperation, and mutual agreement amongst the parties. Example, management and the employees' unions. Improves morale. Good industrial relations built in mutual cooperation and common agreed approach motivate one to contribute one's best, result in higher productivity and hence income, give more job satisfaction, and help improve the morale of the workers. Reduced wastage. Good industrial relations are maintained on the basis of a cooperation and recognition of each other. It will help increase production. The scope of industrial relation are relations between employee, groups association or unions, and management, management and the government, unions and government, or between employers and unorganized employees. It would also include collective relations among trade unions, employers, associations, and the government. The activities relating to the above relationships would entail structuring of labor management relations and its regulation, labor legislative compliance. Factors influencing IR, economic, socialist, capitalist, or mixed economy, per capita income of workers. Social, nature and composition of workforce and their status and power in society. Institutional, government policy, labor legislations, trade unions, and employer organizations. Political, ideologies and policies. Technological, modernization, automation, and capital structure. When there are some disputes or conflict among the employees and the employers in an organization, then one can say that there is poor industrial relation. Causes. Perhaps the main cause or source of poor industrial relations resulting in inefficiency and labor unrest is mental laziness on the part of both management and labor. Effects. Poor industrial relation produces high disquieting effects on the economic life of the country. Multiplier effects. Modern industry, for that matter modern economy, are interdependent. Fall in normal tempo. Poor industrial relations adversely affect the normal tempo of work so that work far below the optimum level costs build up. In a globalized environment where low wages abroad continue to drive down wages at home, industrial relations become a more vital subject than ever. There are some suggestions which can help improve industrial relation. Both management and unions should develop constructive attitudes towards each other. All basic policies and procedures relating to industrial relations should be clear to everybody in the organization and to the union leader. System theory is the attempt to understand international relations as a set of observable, understandable patterns between the actors that are elements of the international system. System. A collection of elements related to each other by some pattern of behavior and actions. System approach. Explanation of observed patterns in international events by attributing those patterns to the characteristics of the international system. The ideological framework of industrial relations is simple. It is all about the partnerships between countries and what they can offer to one another. If there are countries which have good industrial relations, one can be sure that they are likely to support one another. Social partnerships are very important when it comes to industrial relations, and the most ideal frameworks are going to involve the big superpowers using industry together, and the smaller countries trying to get involved or to challenge them to take over as a superpower. The ideology of an industrial relations system. The ideology is a philosophy or a systemized body of beliefs and sentiments held by the actors. The establishment of rules. The actors in a given context establish rules for the workplace and the work community, including those governing contracts among the actors in an industrial relations system. The concept of a system is applied in the sense that industrial relations it consists of the processes by which human beings and organizations interact at the workplace and, more broadly, in society as a whole, to establish the terms and conditions of employment. In other words, certain inputs, example, human labor, capital, managerial skill, from the environment are combined via alternative processes, example, collective bargaining, unilateral management decisions, legislation, to produce certain outcomes, example, production, job satisfaction, wage rates. Consistent with the definitions of industrial relations, the study of industrial relations and the systems model focus on outcomes most closely related to the interaction of employees and employers and the web of rules concerning employment that they and their organizations along with government established to govern employer-employee relations. Industrial conflicts are the results of several socio-economic, psychological, and political factors. Various lines of thoughts have been expressed and approaches used to explain this complex phenomenon. One observer has stated, an economist tries to interpret industrial conflict in terms of impersonal market forces and laws of supply-demand. To a politician, industrial conflict is a war of different ideologies, perhaps a class war. Psychological approach. The problems of industrial relations have their origin in the perceptions of the management, unions, and rank and file workers. These perceptions may be the perceptions of persons, of situations, or of issues involved in the conflict. The perceptions of situations and issues differ because the same position may appear entirely different to different parties. Human relations approach. Human resources are made up of living human beings. They want freedom of speech, of thought, of expression, of movement, etc. Sociological approach. Industry is a social world in miniature. The management goals, workers' attitudes, perception of change in industry are all in turn decided by broad social factors, like the culture of the institutions, customs, structural changes, status symbols, rationality, acceptance or resistance to change, tolerance, etc. Industry is thus inseparable from the society in which it functions. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. According to International Labour Organization, ILO, industrial relations deal with either the relationship between the state and employers, and workers' organization, and the relation between the occupational organizations themselves. Industrial relations are the relationships between employees and employers within the organizational settings. Effective industrial relations bring mental revolution among employees, which bring complete overhaul in the outlook of employees. The scope of industrial relations includes all aspects of relationships, such as bringing cordial and healthy labor management relations, creating industrial peace, and developing industrial democracy. The most important benefit of industrial relations is that this ensures continuity of production. This means continuous employment for all, from manager to workers.